In this video, we'll take a look at the basic steps involved with getting up and running with DDC. After making your purchase, you'll be forwarded to a download page where you can download a zip file. Within that zip file, you'll find an OS X and Windows installer. Here I'm just going to show you the Windows installer, but the OS X installer is essentially identical. So we'll accept the license agreement. At the end here, the installer will list every live installation where the DDC scripts were installed. As you can see here, I have multiple live installations on my system. If you don't see the live installation that you're using in this list, you can select it manually. All right, and this is really only something that advanced users or beta testers will have to deal with. You should first take a look at the controller files on the repository to see if a file for your controller is available. If it is, simply download the file and follow the included instructions. If not, you'll need to set up your controller manually. DDC scripts allow you to use up to 32 encoders. All right, and when we say encoder, we mean encoders, knobs, or faders, basically anything that isn't a button or a switch. And this table here lists the CC numbers that you need to assign to your controller. Buttons are essentially the same. You can use up to 32 of them, and this table lists the note numbers that are assigned to the buttons. Now, if your button sends CCs instead of notes, you can specify that in the editor. Also, all the controls in DDC are set up to work on channel 16, but you can change that in the editor. Now, there's some controllers that don't allow you to change the MIDI messages the controls send. In cases like that, you can go to the repository, and in the miscellaneous folder, you'll find a control number definitions file. This file allows you to change the CC numbers that are used for encoders, as well as the note or CC numbers that are used for buttons. For your settings in Live, you'll need to select one of the DDC scripts. There's actually 6 of them, DDC 1 through DDC 6. The reason there are 6 of these is so that you can use up to 6 controllers where each controller is controlling a different device or group of devices. All right, so here I'll just select DDC 1, and I'll select my controller, the MPK61 in this case, as the input. Now if the controller has LEDs that can be remotely controlled, you'll also select the controller as the output. And finally, if the controller has regular knobs or faders that aren't motorized, you can select a takeover mode other than none to prevent jumps in value when you move between devices and such. Okay, so everything we've covered so far just has to be done once. It's kind of a set it and forget it thing. Now we get into the fun part, editing our script. To do that, we'll launch the editor and then select the DDC script that we want to edit. In this case, it's going to be DDC 1. Here we see our 32 encoders, and on this tab we see our 32 buttons. And as you can see, most of these already have a default assignment. But of course, we're going to want to change these. That's the whole point. All right, so to edit any control, we click its Edit button. And now we can choose the device as well as which parameter of that device to control. Right now, we only have 2 options, either EQ8 or none. Of course, assigning to none will give this control no assignment. Now, if we want to control some device other than EQ8, we can edit our device list. As you can see here, the only device listed is EQ8. Let's remove that. All right, now when we go to add a device, you can see that all of Live's native devices are listed here. So we can select one like Beat Repeat and add it to our list. Now if we leave this device name field blank, what that means is that we'll be able to control the first instance of that device type, Beat Repeat in this case, on a track. Now let's say there's a case where you have 2 beat repeats on a track and you want to be able to control the second one. This device name field allows you to target that second one by allowing you to specify a name here. And then in Live, you can simply give the beat repeat device you want to target the same name. In my opinion, this is most useful for racks. So I'll select a rack and give it a name. And the real nice thing about this is that I can add more than one of the same device type as long as they each have a different name. So I'll add another rack and give it a different name. You can see that after making those changes, all of the controls here have no assignment. The reason for that is because they were assigned to EQ8 and I removed that from the device list. Now when I go to edit my controls, I can choose which rack I want my controls to target. The next thing I want to show you is pages. So far, all of my controls just have 1 assignment. All right, but we can have up to 8 pages of assignments if we like. All right, so if I go to page 2 here, you can see none of my controls have assignments. But let's change that. I'll assign this encoder to a beat repeat parameter. And now you can see I have 2 pages of assignments for this control. We also have a convenience function for copying settings between pages. I can also name each page, and the names I use here will show up in Live status bar when I switch between pages. And of course, that brings up the question of how do you switch between pages? You can do that with what are called accessory controls. You have 2 different methods for switching between pages. You can either have direct page selection, so you can directly select any of the 8 pages, or you can have relative navigation, so you can navigate to the previous or next page. This lock button here allows you to lock the controls to a particular track. This way you can navigate around in your sets while still maintaining control over the devices on a particular track. Alright, when you're done editing, you'll select Save and Transfer, and this will transfer your settings to all of the live installations on your system. So far we've only looked at controlling devices that are included with Live. We can also control third-party plugins as well as Macs for Live devices. In order to do that, we need to create device files for the devices we want to control. And that's very easy to do. To give you an example of that, I have Diva here. To create a device file for it, I'll select DDC Capture Tool as a control surface. Then I'll turn the device off and then on again, and you can see the status bar indicates that Diva has been captured. Now when I go to edit my device list, I can now select Diva. And when I edit my controls, again I can select Diva and choose the parameter I want to control. And this works for any plugin or Macs for Live device.